and I'm the loan officer here at Central Texas College. I am joined by my supervisor and the Director of Financial Aid, Pearl Creviston. We are here,
everybody.
we are here today to answer any questions that you guys may have about financial aid. So we encourage you to think of anything that you've ever wanted to ask and get direct answers. And as we open up this Q&A session, we encourage you to just ask away, ask whatever you want. We're here to answer your questions. Nobody has questions?
Well, I'm going to start, if it's okay, with a couple of things that we get from students all the time. And probably one of the biggest is, why is my financial aid now showing ineligible? And that confuses more students. And what it means is if a student is not full-time, with all classes starting at the exact same time, any aid will not transmit until 10 days prior to the start of each class. So what that means is if you're in halftime and you qualify for $2,000 for the term, it would not release until 10 days prior to the start of each class. So if two of your classes start now in 6 hours, then half of the aid releases at $1,000 and the other half is ineligible until 10 days prior to the start of that next class. So that's probably one of the single biggest questions we get. The only other time you might get an ineligible message is if one of the classes you're taking is actually not required for your degree plan. And in that case, you definitely would need to contact financial aid and be able to find out exactly what the issue is and why, and make sure that is the reason why you're ineligible. But 99% of the time, it is because you are not in 12 credit hours for the full semester, and they do not all start at the same time. Sharon, do you have another tip maybe that you want to share?
Yes, being over the loan office, we get a lot of questions about, well, I didn't want my loan previously, but now I want it. Am I eligible to get it? We do not mind going back and awarding you your loans that you previously denied. However, please pay attention to the loan deadlines. For instance, for the spring term that we are currently in, the last day to make any requests or changes to your loans is going to be March 19th. This is because we do have to do some accounting on our end at the end of every semester. So please pay attention to the loan deadline dates. Again, March 19th is the one for spring 21. And after that, there is going to be no changes to loans, meaning that you cannot then go back and decide that you want your spring loan if you previously denied it. And we can't make any monetary dollar changes to it or anything. No changes will be made. At that time, they will be frozen and we will prepare for summer. A change that is coming in this summer of 21 is we will now be using a summer loan request form. These forms will be made available on the day that the spring deadline is, which is March 19th. They'll be available in eTreeve. Every student wanting to take out a loan for the summer must complete a form and turn it in via eTreeve, or you can email it directly to the loan office or financial aid department. Again, it is very important if you plan to utilize summer loan funds that you complete the summer loan request form, okay? This can be located in eTreeve. They will be made available on March 19th. Mrs. Pearl, you're muted.
Oops, sorry, I just realized I was muted. Sorry, guys. One of the other issues that we get a lot of phone calls on and a lot of confusion about is a balance check. So I kind of wanted to go over that process a little bit more with students to explain how that process works. So once you're awarded financial aid, what the financial aid office does is actually transmit your eligible portion of aid to the business office. Once the business office has that aid, they will apply it to any tuition charges. They will then make any available aid that was left that wasn't used for tuition available at the CTC bookstore. They will then process balances typically within 30 days of the start of your classes. So I think a lot of times where this gets confusing for students is, well, my classes start at all different times. So how do I know when I'm going to get my balance check? Keep in mind, if you stagger classes, they don't all start and end at the same time, then that clock starts over each time we get a new start date. So we transmit 10 days prior to the start of classes, but it does not transmit to your bank account. It'll always transmit to the business office student account. The business office is the department that would be able to let you know when you might expect your balance check if you want a specific time frame. The financial aid office does not have that information. So also, what we've done is when you call the financial aid office starting this week, we have implemented a new calling process which will prompt you to choose an option for different questions that we feel were most relevant that came to the financial aid office. Oftentimes they'll call financial aid, for instance, for VA, and it's not our department that processes VA. So you now have the option to press a button and go directly to the VA office. If we believe your question is related to accounts receivable, business office, balance checks, tuition exemptions, and those sorts of things, all of that is handled through the business office. So that prompt will send you directly to them. And then what we really like about the new call process is you will actually be able, based on your last name, to choose a prompt that will put you directly in contact to either the person or their voicemail for the processor that is processing your financial aid file. So specific questions about Title IV, which includes student loans, Pell Grant, SEOG, and work study, are directed to our department. Anything such as a tuition exemption or VA or your TA, for example, is all processed through the business office. So we get a lot of phone calls that are actually for other departments. So we know students have had issues trying to reach people, they get frustrated, and we have spent quite a few weeks getting this new phone system implemented and hope that it will help to weed out some of the basic questions that students have that may not be financial aid questions, but they don't realize that. So I'm hoping everyone will start using the new system and maybe give us some feedback as to what you think about it. Is it better? Is it easier? And are you able to reach people better? So I'm going to stop for a little bit and throw it back to Sharon, see if anybody has any questions at this point that they want to get better answers for.
Yes, Monica has a really good question. Her question is, we get questions regarding first-time loan borrowers that do not receive funds prior to 10 days. Will they be dropped for non-payment? This is a very good point to bring up. I cannot stress how many times we get this question, right? So if you are a first-time loan borrower, this means that you have never taken out a student loan before or a direct student loan before. What will happen is you will get your loans dispersed to the business office 30 days after the start of your classes. Again, that is 30 days after the start of your classes. Typically, we do say loans or Title IV funding disperses 10 days prior to. This is not the case when it comes to first-time loan borrowers, okay? So if you start classes and you see that you still haven't got a disbursement, 9 times out of 10, you are a first-time loan borrower. You can verify that information by calling the department. You should not be dropped for non-payment as long as you have completed your checklist items. This means that we have your loan entrance on file as well as assigned master promissory notes, okay? As long as those things have been completed and you have no checklist items remaining, then you have what is called pending aid and you will not be dropped by the business office. And you must be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours. I cannot stress that part enough either. In order for loans to disperse outside of the Kate Center students, you must be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours, okay? I know for the Pell, sometimes you can be in only one class and it'll go out. That is not the case for loans. For loans, it must be 6 credit hours. So as long as you're enrolled in 6 credit hours and have completed your checklist items, you should not be dropped from classes if you are a first-time loan borrower waiting for those funds to disperse. That was really good. I'm so happy you asked that question. I'm trying to think of another popular question I get from all the time. CATE Center students, I'll go ahead and address that since I did talk about that. If you are in the CATE Center, it's your responsibility to self-identify at the start of your classes in order for us to be able to award you funds, okay? As a courtesy, I do reach out to Ms. Veronica Martin and I do request a list of active students, and I'll go through that list and get you pre-awarded. However, once you get into that second class, those funds will not automatically release until you self-identify and say, hey, I'm ready for my next disbursement, okay? Things are a little bit different, so we do count on you students to self-identify and reach out to the loan department. You could do that via email, or you could do that via phone, and just let us know, hey, I've registered for my next class, okay? That way we can get those funds out to you in a timely manner.
I see a question, Sharon, also about the FAFSA. Is it still available for spring 21? Yes, it is. The FAFSA application for spring and summer is actually the 2020-2021 FAFSA application. And what a lot of students did, and I know it's a little confusing with the 2020, 21, 2020, 2022, is we have a lot of applicants out there that actually applied for the FAFSA application, completed the process, and it is for 2021 and 2022. They were very excited. They completed it. They're ready to go to school in the spring because we're in spring 21. However, it's the wrong FAFSA for spring. For spring and summer, that is the end of last year's FAFSA, which is the 2021, and you certainly can go into Department of Education and you'll want to do so quickly to get that FAFSA application processed as well. The good news is if you did the 21-22 and you're complete, you're all set for the next year, which is starting in August. So yes, it's definitely still available.
That's awesome. I do see another question. It says, my SAP status is in Web Advisor, indicates I'm in jeopardy of losing my financial aid. What is maximum time frame? Excellent question. Maximum time frame means that you came from another institution and your grade level puts you above us, or that you have reached the maximum time allowed to get a degree at a 2-year institution, okay? So that means you're probably over that 90 credit, depending on whatever your program length is. Basically, you have exceeded that and there is no more financial aid that can be pulled at a 2-year institution. Basically, you will have to go to a university or above a grade level above us in order to resume receiving financial aid.
Also, to piggyback off of that, the financial aid SAP status is a satisfactory academic progress. And what different statuses are is you could have one that says you're on a warning. Under a warning status, you're allowed to continue receiving Title IV funding for financial aid, and your aid will continue to process. Now, if you see a status in red on Web Advisor, that typically means you've already lost your financial aid eligibility, and any aid that you did have may be denied already. So for instance, maximum time frame that Sharon just addressed is one reason you would lose eligibility. The other could be suspension. And for financial aid, a lot of students don't realize the suspension and what we look at for academic standing includes both completion rate and GPA. So students say, well, my GPA is a 2.5. Why am I on a suspension? It doesn't make sense. And it could be because you've either failed or dropped several classes. And what that means is you now have a deficit completion rate. A really good example is if you take 12 credit hours in one semester, you withdraw from 2 of those classes, but you got A's in both of the other classes. So your GPA might be a 4.0 for the term, but your completion rate is now at 50% because you only completed 50% of what you received financial aid for. And that's the whole point for Department of Education. If they're paying for classes for you to receive financial aid, the expectation is that you are progressing towards completion of a degree plan. So you need to complete classes and do so successfully. So each class you take counts as an attempted course. When you fail it or drop it, it counts as a non-completed course and it reduces your completion rate. And I often get this question from students. Well, if I know I'm going to fail a class, isn't it better to drop it than to fail it? I would have to say yes, as long as you realize that in either case, it reduces your completion rate and it will impact your financial aid. But if it were me and I was a student and I knew I was going to fail this class, rather than get an F, as long as I have the opportunity to withdraw from that class, then I would choose to withdraw rather than fail. So that's a really common question that we get all the time. So great questions on the academic standing and what SAP means. Thank you, everyone.
And just to piggyback off of what Ms. Pearl says, a lot of times once the student is contemplating if they are wanting to withdraw, if they know that they're going to fail a class or if they're going to allow themselves to fail the class, a lot of times we get the question of, will I have to pay money back? We do not know at the time that you're going to drop if you will owe. A return to Title IV is done, and then that is what determines if you have to pay back any of the financial aid funds that you received or Title IV funds that you received while attending our institution. That is done once you withdraw or you fail the class at the end of every semester or term, or at whatever point you become a total drop. Return to Title IV is then calculated, and that's when we will know if you will owe or anything.
So we're hoping you all have more questions for us. We get an awful lot of questions in email. So the purpose of this event is to really get you guys to ask those questions that you just don't understand, what you're confused about. And hopefully if we start doing this on a monthly basis, you all will be able to tune in anytime and get questions answered. There's just a lot of confusion about when to file, how do I do a FAFSA application, and basic financial aid processes we have listed on our financial aid website on ctc.edu. And we have an entire section that is completely filled with every question a student has probably ever asked us and the answers to those questions. But sometimes I think it's just getting started. Students don't know. They complete a FAFSA and they never check back with the school. Probably one of the biggest issues we have. You do a FAFSA, for instance, in March, and you're not planning on going to school until August. So you kind of put it out of your head. You know you met the deadline, you know you did the FAFSA, but unless you follow up with CTC and the financial aid office specifically, you may not have a completed financial aid FAFSA file like you think you do. And what I mean by that is Department of Education can select a student's academic file for a process called verification. What happens with verification is you completed that FAFSA application. Department of Education says you did so successfully. Congratulations, you now have financial aid. But it also says, please contact your school. And this is where we lose a lot of students on not following through with that process. And it's detrimental to you because you cannot receive financial aid unless your aid file is completed by the school. So what prevents us from completing it could be things like we've sent you an email through your Eagle Mail account telling you that you need to turn in certain documentation. If you don't check your Eagle Mail, you don't know that we've asked you for this information. So one of the biggest disconnects that we have continuously with students, and I would say this is in all areas of Central Campus especially, we do not know what your questions are. We are communicating with you and we're using your Eagle Mail to do so, but students are not signing into Eagle Mail and getting that set up. So oftentimes they say, well, nobody's contacted me. I can tell you that the process for financial aid is very, very electronic, and it is sent out within 3 to 5 days. We get your FAFSA application and we have sent you an email. If you did not respond, we even send you follow-up emails. So we are communicating with you, but you may not be going to the right locations to find that information, and you're not contacting us because Department of Ed's told you when you completed that file that you already have a completed financial aid file, which is not the case until you accept it with us. So in cases like this right now, where we have students trying to go to spring and summer classes, they did a FAFSA for 21, 22. We've told you you did that, but without following up and understanding how that financial aid is awarded, you may not realize until classes start in January that you don't have spring financial aid because you did the wrong FAFSA file. So chatting with us, getting a hold of us, emailing us is all very important, but you have to use your Eagle Mail to get most of this information from the institution.
That's great. There has been a couple of questions that came in, Ms. Pearl, while you were talking. It says, can you mention it will be every second Tuesday of the month? Just reiterate that we will be doing this every second Tuesday of the month moving forward. And then what could be done in order to get out of a suspension situation? So again, we're going back to the SAP suspension. If you have a reason for not doing your best in your classes, personal, family, whatever maybe may have what's going on, or during that time, you will complete a SAP appeal form that is located on the eTrees. Please understand that completing a SAP appeal does not mean that it will be granted. The committee reviews it and then makes a decision, and you will be notified of the decision. Can a student be retained in a course prior to the award letter showing in their record? Or is that at the point we know for sure that there is aid if all else is good? So I'm guessing this question is asking, can a student register for classes even though they haven't been offered any Title IV funding? The answer is yes, but they will be responsible for paying out of pocket until, and basically they'll reimburse themselves if they qualify for any Title IV funding. So that is the answer for that one. And can you get a FAFSA, or does a student need to do a FAFSA application if you get a GI Bill from your parent? Absolutely. You absolutely can complete a FAFSA, and you may be awarded additional funds in addition to your GI Bill.
I also want to mention one thing that a lot of students don't realize is they may have a financial aid award. And for instance, let's say your classes are $700 and you only qualified for a small amount of Pell Grant. So your Pell Grant may only be $500 based on the number of hours that you're in, but your classes are $730. So what are you supposed to do as a student, and how do you figure out what you owe? So in WebAdvisor, under your student self-serve account, you can look at what your charges are. You can see how much financial aid we've transmitted, and you would then be responsible for paying any difference for those classes at the time of registration. And so that's why it's so important to know how much your financial aid is and how much your classes are. We see a lot of students get dropped for non-payment by the business office because their financial aid was there, but it wasn't enough to cover the cost. So you may still owe $100. You're going to be dropped by them for non-payment at most cases because you still owe that balance. So that is a really big question we get from a lot of students is, why did I get dropped? I had financial aid. I did everything right. You all said I have this award. And then as part of that, it's understanding how much will you get if you're not full-time. Knowing that when you look at a term award, you may have $3,100 for the spring semester. If you just take one class, you're not getting $3,100. You're going to get approximately a fourth of that. So some students say, well, what about summer? In the summer, I'm going to be taking full-time, which is 6 hours. And this is another really confusing question that we get all the time. is what is full-time? Full-time is 12 hours. Can you stagger your classes? Yes. But if you want the full amount of aid that you're seeing in each designated term, you have to take 12 credit hours, which also makes people ask this question, do I have to be full-time? You do not have to be full-time to receive a portion of your financial aid, but there are requirements for each amount of aid that you're going to get. So a very, very small award, for instance, a student might only have $300 in Pell Grant for the whole term. That is probably going to mean that they won't get any of that aid until they're in 12 credit hours. If you have a very large Pell Grant award, you might be in 3 hours and get at least a portion of it. And like Sharon mentioned, for a student loan, you're going to have to be in at least 6 hours to get that. We also have scholarship aid and different types of aid that require different types of enrollment. For instance, a lot of students receive what's the AER scholarship, an AER scholarship. It's a great scholarship worth a lot of money, and they'll get that scholarship, but they may have a requirement to be in 12 hours to get that aid. So that means until you're in 12 hours, you will not receive any of that aid. So if you take 6 hours in the first 8 weeks, and then 6 more in the second 8 weeks, that scholarship is not going to release until the second 8 weeks. So I try to tell loan students, just to make it easier, especially since you're trying to use your loan money to maybe purchase books and supplies and do things like that, try to take a minimum of 6 credit hours that start at the same time. That way you know you will at least get half of your loan up front and be able to use it for tuition and books. If you do not take 6 hours at the same time, while you may be held in classes, you're not going to have money for books. And we get this complaint quite a lot. I can't buy my books. I have a student loan. Well, the student loan isn't going to release until you're in 6 hours. But I have a class that starts now and a class that starts later, and I need that book money right now. And the problem is we cannot release that loan until you're in 6 credit hours. So make it easier on yourself and sign up for at least 6 hours if you're going to try and get a student loan. I'm out of words, Sharon.
It's okay, I'll pick it up from there. So just going back into the student loans, another hiccup that we see with students, they'll say, I accepted my loan, but it never dispersed. Why is that? And they have completed the low interest counseling, and they've also completed the NPN, and they are enrolled in 6 credit hours. Sometimes, things happen on our end, which are known as rejects, and we just simply have to go in and fix that. Okay. So sometimes we are not aware of it if we haven't ran a reject report. So you just simply bring it to our attention. We can get that fixed and get your funds released. Okay. I don't want everything to just always be on the student. Sometimes there are some things that, because Department of Education, they look for certain things when we're sending the information up to them. And sometimes they just don't want to accept it. So we just have to go in and fix it on your behalf. And that will delay you, but as soon as you see a problem, please bring it to our attention. That way we can get it resolved quickly in a timely manner. Okay.
I see another question that I'll go ahead and talk about. It says, what about these financial aid dates? So overlapping dates from one term to another for financial aid causes a bit of confusion, but when you look at a term for financial aid, we have 3 designated terms. We have fall, spring, and summer. Each term has a defined date range. We put those dates on our financial aid webpage at CTC. If you ever get an email from us, we all have those date ranges at the bottom of our emails. So those are extremely important date ranges. And what they mean is if you have a spring class, for instance, the spring starts January 1, and this year, the date for the end of spring is May 16th. So we have classes, however, that start all over the place. We might start a new class every month at CTC. And that's great, it's convenient, but when you're a financial aid student, you have to keep in mind that your classes must be within a designated date range. The designated date range to use your financial aid for those classes in spring must be, for instance, January 1 start and end by May 16th. So if you are towards the end of the spring term and you pick up a class, for instance, in April, it may not end until June. That means you're not going to receive any financial aid for that class, even if it is required for your degree plan, because the class overlaps the term. This is extremely important for students to pay attention to. There is also a methodology in place that when you register for a class online and you get a message on that class that says this class may not be Title IV eligible. That is your warning message internally letting you know that that class is overlapping the term and Title IV will not be released for that class. So that is a really important question to keep in mind. What are the date ranges for the terms and what are the requirements to use your financial aid? You always have to take classes that are required for your academic degree plan, and those classes cannot overlap each of the individual terms. So one of the main reasons for that is what we call, and we've talked about this earlier, the academic standing. At the end of each term, we have to calculate academic standing and make the determination whether or not you're eligible to receive aid in the next semester, because Department of Ed has that requirement. We can give you aid, we give you an award letter for each term within the academic year, but at the end of each term, we have to calculate whether or not you're still eligible to use that aid in the next term. So as long as your GPA is over a 2.0 and your completion rate is over 67%, then that means we will go ahead and give you what's called a SAT, satisfactory academic standing for your financial aid, and you'll continue to receive aid. The problem with taking overlapping classes can also trigger this message. You're in the middle of those two overlapping classes. You realize you didn't get financial aid for them, but it's okay. You're going to go ahead and pay for those, but you still wanted to take those two classes. There's nothing wrong with that, but you might get an automatic suspension or just a simple suspension at the end of that term because you haven't completed those classes. So a lot of students say, hey, wait a minute, I haven't even finished my classes. How can you tell me I'm on suspension? And the reason is because we are required to calculate whether you have successfully completed all of your classes before awarding additional aid. Then that calculation says those classes were not completed within the date range required. So therefore, you are not eligible to use additional aid at this time. So in that case, your aid would be denied for the next semester. And when you finish those two overlapping classes, you can come back to us and say, I finished my classes, can you please reevaluate me now and award my aid? And we will do that. So just understanding that and knowing how that process works and why those dates are so important, it really makes a big difference on how your financial aid releases.
Yes. And talking about how financial aid releases, I do want to come back to loans. When we disperse loans, we do disperse them in two separate payments within one semester, okay? So a lot of times I do get students who email me and say, I did not receive the full amount of my loan that I was guaranteed that I was going to receive. We do that because Department of Education regulates and says that we must disperse your loan in two separate payments. We cannot give you all of everything that you're entitled to at one time. So that is typically at the beginning of the semester, the start of the semester, and at midpoint, okay? So I just wanted to put that out there because that is a very common question that we receive, and I wanted to clarify. And I know new people have joined in since I talked about our new process that we will be doing for summer, so I just want to go back and revisit that for a moment. So for this summer, starting summer 21, we will be re-implementing the summer loan request forms, okay? They will be available starting March 19th via the eTree system. You will need to complete that if you plan on taking courses in the summer semester and you would like to utilize any direct loan funds that you have remaining, okay? I will have to get a form for every student that would like to utilize loans. You can turn the form in via email, or you could drop it off at the campus by making an appointment if need be. Preferably, we would rather see it submitted back via email, okay? You may notice right now that your summer says E, has an E by it, and you're not able to do anything with it. Again, this is because we will be implementing a summer loan request form starting on March 19th. It will be available to students to fill out.
I'd like to also talk for just a minute about a couple of other departments that are key in financial aid awarding, but the VA. We get a lot of questions about VA. And I believe, Bruce, you can confirm this for me, that VA is actually scheduled to host one of these sessions on Thursday of this week.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
I want to say, please make sure you watch that if you have VA questions.
Yeah, Veteran Services will host their CTC Live this coming Thursday, February 11th at 10 o'clock. And they also will be a monthly event, the first Thursday of every month, just like financial aid is the first Tuesday of every month. So
thank you, Bruce. That's great news. And I think the more we do this, the more participation we get, the more students will start talking about it and realize that we are here to help you. We just need to help you understand the different types of aid that you've qualified for. We have a lot of students that have exemptions, maybe foster care waivers and tuition exemptions and firefighter exemptions, military or police exemptions. We have TA, we have VA, we have scholarships, we have Pell Grant. There's so many different types of aid, and trying to find out who do I talk to about all this different stuff. So VA has its own department that is fully doing nothing but processing VA. And financial aid does not process VA at all. On the other hand, the VA department does not process financial aid. And when we talk about financial aid in the financial aid department, the only aid we're talking about is truly Title IV, which is what students qualify for by doing the FAFSA application. So we all know that's already Pell Grant, it's student loans, it's SEOG, which is a Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and student loans and work study. So that's the only aid that we actually process from a FAFSA application. Now, we do receive from our foundation office scholarships that we simply put on your award notice. That's what we're doing. We're awarding those. And the rules for those scholarships and how they transmit are all uniquely individual to the scholarship award. So we can help answer some scholarship questions. But when it comes to applying for those scholarships, you want to go to the ctcd.edu Foundation website and apply for those scholarships every year between January and March. They complete those applications for scholarships. They award the students pretty close to the end of summer for the following fall term. So we also have aid that's available on campus through student academic success in Student Studio. And Mariceli can address some of those different types of aids, but it's aid available to students such as for the food pantry is done through the foundation office. There's Eagle aid that may be used for financial emergency or need-based type situations that do not come from the Title IV financial aid department, but they come through Student Academic Studio and Success. So knowing how and who to talk to is so important. And we just ask you to look at our websites, look at the different offices, try and figure out what types of aid. We can help answer those questions for you and direct you to the right departments, but it would be so much better if you could just communicate directly with that department so that you can get your answers much quicker. I'm out of words again, Sharon. I'm going to throw it back to you. I'm going to look at chat. I don't know if there were a couple of more questions that may have come in.
Okay. I just want to reiterate again, March 19th is the deadline for spring 21 for loan requests. So again, if you previously declined your spring loans and you may have ran into financial troubles and you're now needing, your loans, you have until March 19th to make any requests. I am getting a lot of requests for students to receive the maximum amount of their loan. So that's just simply increasing the loan amount to the maximum you're eligible to receive for the semester. Those kind of requests you have until March 19th, guys. Okay, I know we're going on spring break the week before, so I want you to keep in mind before we head out for spring break that if you want any changes made to any denied spring loans for the students that are eligible for financial aid, that is the key. You have to be eligible already. I'm referring to students who thought they wouldn't need loans for the spring, so they denied them, or things like that, or they never accepted them because they figured they wouldn't need them. Those are the type of changes that I'm referring to. Those changes can be made up until March 19th, okay? Past March 19th, I'm going to put them on a freeze and no changes or alterations can be made, okay? I just want to put that out there again. Pay attention to the deadlines. They are located on our financial aid webpage up under the loans tab. We have our deadlines for every semester for the loan request. There, please pay attention and know those deadlines, okay?
I got a question from someone that said, what's the difference between my academic suspension and my financial aid suspension? That's an awesome question, and it confuses people all the time. So what they do is the student will go to talk to academic advising, and they were perhaps on a suspension status, or maybe they haven't attended in a very, very, very long time and they're coming back. So a couple of things can happen. You can work with academic advising and be granted an appeal. And that means you're going to be allowed to register for classes and take classes again, and you're going to work with academic advising on improving your academic standing over a period of time. That, however, has nothing to do with a suspension you may be on for financial aid. That is a separate approval process and a separate form that you do on e-forms in order to see if you can use your financial aid again or not. So it's a big difference when you talk to academic advising versus financial aid for suspension, because we can both have a suspension status on you. And one is truly as a student, you're on suspension, and the other is simply a financial aid suspension. And our awarding criteria for financial aid is a little bit different than the academic standing requirements you may have for the school. So a big part of that is something that's called academic fresh start. I came here 15 years ago and I was terrible. I was in high school, I didn't care, and I just failed on my classes. It was awful, and now I'm all grown up, I'm serious, I want to come back to school. Can I do that? So you will start with academic advising, and they may grant an academic appeal for you to come back under what's called academic fresh start. That means you get to start all over again. We're going to wipe the slate clean, we're going to let you start over, and we're going to let you just begin again. For financial aid, that may not be the case. So it's extremely important, if you're ever given an academic fresh start and you're wanting to use financial aid, that you get in touch with us directly and you find out, am I going to be able to use financial aid again? So sometimes you might be able to. Sometimes maybe it was one term, all F's. We can look at it and say that was a long, long time ago, and other times we can't. So oftentimes what you've done at other schools between then and now will be taken into consideration. We have something called maximum time frame that Sharon's already talked to you about, and a lot of times this comes from transfer credits that you got from the military. It comes from transfer credits you got from other schools. So you come to CTC and it's your first semester here, and we say, sorry, but you're on maximum time frame, which makes no sense to students who are just starting at CTC. So the reason is we only offer an associate's degree as our highest degree. That degree requires 60 credit hours to complete. Department of Education says we can award up to 150% of those hours, or in this case, it's 90. If you come from a four-year school, come here to take a few classes, and you transfer in 90 credit hours, and you're just here to take a few more classes, we're going to tell you you're not eligible because you have maximum time frame. You already have 150% of the degree requirements for any program we offer. So our whole point at CTC when it comes to financial aid and awarding is to get you in and get you out with the least amount of loan debt we can offer you and the least amount of Title IV usage that we can give, because we want you to be able to go on to a four-year school and be able to still have financial aid availability when you get to that level. So students often get frustrated. They change from one school to another and change schools all the time. And maybe they did well at one school and the next school they didn't do too well, so they'll change to another school. And for financial aid, that's probably just about the worst thing you can do. You want to come in, you want to start, you want to be on a program, and you want to work your way all the way through that program till you're done and move on. You're wasting time, you're wasting money, and you're using up financial aid eligibility for classes that you're not completing. So we really take it seriously here at Financial Aid in our department about keeping track of your financial aid and what your eligibility is so that you can use it to the maximum benefit for your degree plan.
I see a question. It says, students have questions about the consortium agreements. The forms generally say financial aid. Which office would normally complete this form for students? So this form, whenever you go to fill out a consortium agreement, it is located in the financial aid building, in the same building that financial aid is located in. However, it is located on the second floor. It will go to Stephanie Lopez, who is responsible for accepting and completing the consortium agreements for students, okay? Again, it is in the same building where financial aid is located. However, it's going to be on the second floor, attention of Stephanie Lopez.
And I just put her email address out there if anybody wants that information. It is on the chat.
Yes, these were some great questions. We were able to give a lot of information to you guys. Thank you so much for participating. And we still have more time. So if you have more questions, feel free to ask them. There's no such thing as a wrong question. If you don't know, you don't know. We're here to help and make sure that you do know. We understand a lot of times you send emails or try to call and can't get through. This is why we feel this will be beneficial, as well as to open up a platform to where you can ask the questions directly and get live answers.
And also changing our phone system, we're hoping will be a major factor in getting better results by phone, because I do know that's always been a very frustrating process. So hopefully the new system is going to help get people to the people they need to speak to the most. But just a quick overview of the FAFSA, since that's our specialty in this session, is what are the basics? You have to have an admissions application. You have to have an admissions application because it puts your social security number in the college system. Then you have to do a FAFSA application and you have to identify which school you want your FAFSA sent to. So knowing this one really important fact will help most students anywhere is after you complete a FAFSA, your school gets that FAFSA within 3 to 5 business days, and we are required to notify you. So I promise you that you are getting an email somewhere that you need to respond to and verify your financial aid so that you know you truly are ready to start school now. So admissions first, financial aid, make sure you use our school code. That'll match your FAFSA to us. Then you complete your aid file, but you also have another requirement. You have to be on an active degree plan. So you definitely need to go through academic advising, another department that has to help you set up that part of your process. You have to know what degree plan are you going to work on. You can come to CTC and take classes without being on a degree plan, but you will not receive financial aid for those. We have certain programs like continuing education that offer amazing programs for students, but you are not eligible to use financial aid for those. So understanding what it is you want to do is really important. And as a student, I think that's one of the biggest disconnects. Oftentimes you don't really know. So maybe you talk to the Career Center. We offer a Career Center here at CTC, and you find out what is it I want to do with the rest of my life? But really important is to know you want to figure it out as soon as you can and get started down that path as quickly as you can, and just keep working at it so that you can get in and get out and start earning real earnings based on your education and your life experiences. So we really want you to understand the process, to know that we do communicate with you all the time. And I just encourage everyone that's a student to go through the Eagle Mail and get yourself set up. You can forward that Eagle Mail to your favorite email address if you would rather, but you still have to use it in order to know what it is that we as staff and even faculty are trying to communicate with you. So Sharon has put some links out there on the website for you to go to and use to try and answer some of these questions, to complete the FAFSA. Where do you go? What's our school code? All of that is really good information. So I really don't have anything else that I can think of right now as burning questions. I don't see anything else in the chat. So I am going to say that this probably concludes our presentation for today, but we look forward to seeing you all next month, same time, same place. And thank you, Sharon, Bruce, for your help in getting all this set up. And we're very excited about being able to bring this to you every month. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you. And for those students who may have missed something out of this presentation or still have some questions about this presentation, this session will be available on YouTube, on the CTC YouTube channel, a little bit later today, or hopefully today, maybe tomorrow, but it will be available for you to look at your leisure and review anything that you may have need to go over again or that you may have missed. You'll have it at your fingertips.